If you were to ask me today what I would have done differently in my 20s, it would be these things that I'm about to share with you in this video. While I'm really grateful for all of the experiences that shaped me into who I am today, there are so many things that I look back on and I think if I had a chance to do that over, I definitely would have, or I would have started that sooner, I would have stopped that earlier. So whether you're in your 20s now, you're about to be in your 20s, or maybe you've even passed your 20s like me, these are still gonna be helpful tips that you can apply at any point of your life. If you're wondering a little bit about me, by the way, I am in my early 30s now, and I didn't really realize who I was at the core until maybe like the last 2 years. I really had no idea who I was, what I wanted to be. I couldn't pick a career. I switched community colleges so many times and still never graduated. Couldn't dedicate myself to really anything. And I was constantly jumping around from one thing to the next. And I just really didn't love or value myself. Number one on the list is find better hobbies. I used to draw at one point, but I just let that go in my 20s because I was too busy partying and hanging out with people and doing things that were wasting my time. If I would have just stuck to my hobbies at least, I firmly believe that you give yourself at least a better distraction. You're not wasting time. You're developing skills. You're further developing your talents, your God-given talents that you have, because we all have them. If I could go back and like shake my 20-year-old self, I would tell myself, stop wasting time. Stop wasting time. Take life a little bit more, not necessarily seriously, but treat it more preciously. And do things that fulfill you with the time that you have. Or even if it's like going to the gym or sticking to a fitness routine of some sort. I did go to the gym every now and then, very sparingly, but never stuck to a routine of any sort. And I just really wish that if I had a chance to go back in my 20s, I would have dedicated myself and my time to hobbies that would have improved me in some way, whether it be emotionally, physically, mentally, whatever it is. Like having a good hobby like a sport or something to invest your time and energy into that's going to uplift you in some way is super impactful. It's very easy to go down the wrong path and just waste a bunch of time. And basically just falling in love with the journey a lot earlier instead of wanting that instant gratification. Every time I did something, I was like, oh, this isn't giving me anything, so let me just move on. But that's not how it works. You know, the process is a journey that unfolds over time, and I really wish I would have known that earlier. When you fall in love with the process, it's not about quick, fast results. You really do get to see a beautiful side of you unfold if you give it the right time and nourishment. I genuinely feel like it would have contributed to me discovering who I am as a person way earlier on, which could have helped me connect some dots a lot sooner in my life, in my career, my personal life, who I am, the values and relationships that I want to have. Find better ways to use your time. The next thing on this list is setting boundaries sooner. Do this now. Create your higher self, your ideal self. Write it down. Who is she? Energy can sense when they can take advantage of you. And whether it's intentional or subconscious, that's what's happening. It's an energy. So be really cautious about the time and energy you spend and where and with who. Start thinking about what kind of boundaries you want to set in your life instead of draining yourself. In what situations would you say no, and in what situations would you say yes? Start thinking about that early on and write it down if it helps. It's so much easier to prevent yourself from getting entangled into weird situationships than it is trying to get yourself out of it and to fix it. So always remember that. Prevent over fix. So much easier. It is a little hard in the beginning to set your foot down and put those boundaries in place. But once you do that, I promise you, like the bad energy just kind of weeds itself out. The next thing is I would have definitely started a business earlier. I worked retail basically my whole life until I launched my own business. And that's because that's all I knew. That was familiar in my family. My mom worked in retail, my dad worked as a bus driver, and both of my parents worked at, regular jobs, 9-to-5s. And I used to have this belief that in order to be successful, I needed to become a millionaire by doing this one thing overnight. If I could go back and tell my younger self advice, it would be to just focus on the small steps first. Of course, have that bigger vision, be a millionaire, be whatever you want to be in your mind. But in order to get there, we need to take small actions first. I would heavily focus on replacing my income at my 9-to-5 with a business, a side hustle. Instead of thinking, I want to become a millionaire and just focusing on that, tell yourself, okay, I want to be a millionaire, but first I need to replace my 9 to 5 with a business income, whether that be a side hustle, freelance gig, whatever you want to call it. If you can replace your 9 to 5 income with a business, then you've already set yourself up for success to grow from there. I think a lot of times we put so much pressure on ourselves to be this big thing, make this big breakthrough move and become an overnight success. But nothing can be done unless you build the foundation correctly. So I really would have started my business sooner and figured out what that business would have even been if I had done that 10 years prior to when I actually did it, because I didn't actually make my first 6 figures until after 30, because I spent a lot of time working at a retail job or working whatever job I had, instead of investing my time into a side hustle or a business. I mean, I could have been there a whole lot sooner. So if you still have that time, definitely take advantage of it, because your circumstances will likely only get more challenging and difficult as you get older. You know, you have to think, as bills start coming in, like, you know, maybe in your 20s you still live at home, you have a luxury of not having to pay rent, or maybe you pay rent, but it's definitely not like owning your own house or having a studio or apartment. Take advantage of your circumstances while time is still on your side, because yes, you can do anything at any age, but if you can set yourself up for success earlier on when time is more on your side, then the odds of you becoming more successful are way higher. Ultimately, I would say don't chase paychecks, but chase the bigger vision and know what you want and do the small steps of action to get you to that big vision, instead of like wasting your time just on quick, fast money. And don't chase short-term money. Like, think big, allow yourself to dream big and think about the big vision, you know? But also you need that action plan in between to make sure that you make that big vision a reality. Okay, the next tip is learn to trust your intuition, because I have always been an intuitive person, I would say. And when I say intuitive, I mean like I never really fully planned out like the next 5 to 10 years of my life. I've always taken things kind of in seasons, and when I feel this gut feeling of it's time to change, I will follow that intuition pretty quickly. I mean, I guess that's something that I'm proud of myself for, because when I felt like I was really done with my retail job, I literally put in my 2 weeks and actually moved to another country. I don't even know how I had the balls to do that now looking back, because I had hardly anything saved up. And I mean, like, I probably had $1,000 to my name, moved to a different country, had to apply for a whole new visa, and went through this really difficult, challenging task. But that is an experience in my life that changed me forever. And I did that in my late 20s. If I would have done more things like that earlier on and listened to my intuition whenever I felt like I knew a job wasn't for me, or I knew that there was a skill that I had that I could have further developed earlier on, like, I would listen to my intuition way sooner and react way faster. I would strongly encourage that you let your inner guidance take you to each next phase of your life. And as soon as you get that really strong feeling that it's time to move on, or it's time to let go, it's time to evolve, like, really get curious about that and start exploring it. Don't be afraid to pivot. I've basically lived so many lives in this lifetime already. A lot of people know me for so many different things that I've tried, and just don't be afraid to pivot. I know it's like this huge thing that feels like you've spent all this time to build your identity in this career, or go to school for this thing, or you've studied this for so long, or people know you as this for so long. Like, no, let yourself evolve and don't be afraid to pivot. Like, actually embrace that and celebrate it, because that just means you're growing and you're reaching your higher potential. Okay, the next thing I would have done differently is prioritize experience over things. I spent way too much money from my hard-earned paychecks that I worked in retail for, which weren't even a lot, on materialistic things, on trying to be cool, trying to fit in, clothing, pointless things, okay? Like, I basically was giving my paycheck back to my job because I was buying so much from where I worked. And that is something I would have not done going back and looking at my 20s, I would have invested in experiences, more travel, more things that can better myself as a person, things that add rich experiences into my life, you know? And while I did this a lot more, again, towards the end of my 20s, I would have done it way earlier because those experiences, you keep them for the rest of your life. Materialistic things, they come and go. A lot of times I would end up losing those things, giving them away, or when I moved, I just donated everything entirely, never wore certain things, and it just became a bunch of clutter and overconsumption. And if I would have instead invested in experiences like going to workshops or even just traveling, because it really adds this depth into your character, I think it would have been so helpful to do that earlier on. The next one is a big one. Avoid credit card debt and invest way sooner. I've talked about this a lot, but some of you know that I went on a journey of paying off all of my credit card debt within the last year, and I was able to do that luckily successfully before I got laid off from my job. But if I would have just never accumulated debt to begin with, I would have been able to reinvest it into my business, into myself. I mean, there's so many things I could have done besides just accumulate credit card debt, but we have to give ourselves grace. Life happens. We only know what we know. We only do what we're familiar with. I never really learned about credit cards in general, so a lot of times I was just using it without really understanding how interest accumulated. Unexpected life situations happened when my dog went to the hospital and I had to use my credit card. I just didn't understand financial literacy. Learn what it means to speak the language of money. Money is an energy. So the sooner that you can learn how to tap into the energetic frequency of money and understand the language of money, you can tap into abundance. You can tap into your wealthy era. I also would have definitely learned about passive income way earlier and taken it seriously, because passive income is where you can make income with very little upfront effort and very little maintenance, and it just kind of keeps accumulating over time. And also, you know, money gives us peace of mind and freedom. I later in life built my emergency fund. I was able to build up my savings, pay off all my debt and all that stuff, which allowed me the flexibility to, in my business, turn down certain deals that I just didn't feel aligned with, even though it was very tempting because it's a lot of money. But because I had built my position of financial security, it gave me flexibility to say no to things. And it allowed me to keep my dignity. So it also allowed me to keep my time and freedom. And now I get to work for myself and do whatever I want with my mornings. So understand that the sooner you can get familiar with financial literacy and understanding the language of money, the better you can implement strategies to set yourself free from being a slave to money. But it does take discipline, and it takes a lot of skill. You know, learn to negotiate, learn how to value yourself and your skills, and learn how to advocate for yourself when needed. Girl, you better ask for that raise, and you better know how to ask to get them to say yes. There's so many little things that you can learn about and do that will help benefit you financially if you just take the time out to learn and understand it. Work through all those money limiting beliefs sooner. That money comes from all evil, only evil people have a lot of money, whatever the belief is. Know what your limiting beliefs are and try to work through them, because I would have definitely worked through my limiting beliefs way earlier on. I used to think because I didn't come from money, I didn't deserve money. Isn't that crazy? Because I didn't have anyone in my family who could teach me about money. I thought it just wasn't in the cards for me for so long, but not anymore. Next, learn how to handle conflict. Emotional intelligence is so important. It really affects every relationship and interaction you have with the world. For the longest time in my upbringing, a lot of the things were not healthy in terms of communication. Nobody talked about their emotions or their feelings or really handled conflict in a mature way. There was a lot of yelling, there was a lot of gossip, and honestly, I think that just came with the sides of my cultures. I realized later on, like probably just when I entered my 30s, that a lot of the things I picked up in my upbringing were not healthy for my relationships. Learning how to handle conflict is important everywhere you go. in your job, the people you work with in a business, your community, if you're creating content, the relationship you have with yourself, the relationship that you have with everyone in the world, the intimate relationships, your friendship. At the end of the day, a lot of really amazing relationships get ruined because the lack of communication and the lack of emotional maturity to realize when things need to be talked about. Instead of ignoring conflict, or what a lot of us tend to do is run away from conflict and try to shove it away as fast as possible, imagine just communicating how you actually felt. A lot of times we want to communicate, but we just lack the skill to. So I would have learned earlier on how to process my own emotions and how to make sense out of my emotions, how to validate my own emotions instead of looking for others to validate them for me. There's so much complexity when it comes to our emotions, but they can easily ruin our lives in every relationship we ever have if we're not aware of our behavior and how it affects others, and especially how it affects ourselves. We're not the nicest to ourselves a lot of times. Like, I know that I set out to be on a mission to break generational traumas, and one of the cycles in my family history has honestly been poor communication in terms of handling conflict. So it's just my personal life mission also, and if you can relate to that, then you understand what I mean. But in order to break those generational cycles, we need to do different. We need to be different. Number 8, seek mentorship earlier. If you can, I recommend finding someone that you look up to or that you can learn from, someone that you're inspired by or is where you want to be one day. I remember when I first found my online mentor, which she really didn't know she was my online mentor, but I found a YouTube video kind of like this. And I remember opening up my mind to so many new concepts for the first time. And that is from Marie Forleo's channel, which I've talked about her because I even got her book. Huge fan of everything that she does. I probably watched like every single video on there, listened to her podcast, and was just so amazed by these new ways of thinking that I never really understood before. And this was later in my 20s, so I definitely recommend seeking out some sort of mentor earlier on, even if it's not just a mentor for life, like someone that you can learn skills from, someone who has a business. If you aspire to be a business owner one day, basically you want to be able to learn concepts and systems and the way that people in the actual field think and act and do certain things. If I could go back in time, I would find a mentor sooner. My cat is coming. She's the cutest. Hi. The second to last point I want to talk about, lean into my uniqueness, that little magic that is different that nobody else has. And that is beautiful. I love to reflect. I love personal growth. I love books. For the longest time, I shoved that all away and I focused only on beauty, on makeup. But there was so much more to me that I just didn't show the world because I thought nobody would like that. But what makes you unique is so special, and that's actually your superpower. Leaning into that is gonna help you connect with all the right people in your life. You're gonna find your tribe. You're gonna find the people that you don't have to try to be someone else around because they just get you, because those are your people. The last thing on this list is prioritize your wellness routines. I would definitely recommend getting sleep, proper sleep earlier on. Being disciplined with your morning and night routine is gonna help you thrive as a person. I used to think that meditation and going to the gym consistently weren't as important as they are, because I would hear so many people, successful people, even talk about the importance of their daily routines. And I would think that they were kind of like stretching the truth on it, because I was like, how important could it be? But it actually really makes such a huge difference. Who you are and ultimately who you become is built into your daily habits. The little things that you do consistently. I have a journal practice that I do every night before bed and every morning. And if I would have done that way earlier in life, I think I would have definitely been more focused and stayed consistent with a lot of the goals that I started but never was able to stick to. So don't underestimate the power of your morning and night routines. Your future self relies on the actions you take every day. Don't be overly critical with yourself. If you made it to the end of this video, comment down below thriving so I know that you made it to the end. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'll also love this video that I did called How to Make the Best of Your 20s, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.